Okay, part 5. This is going to be about compression, but before I get to compression, something that I should have done earlier, and something which has been annoying me for pretty much the whole time I've been doing this project, is back on the lead guitar part. This take is really starting to bug me because it seems every time I come out of the track, it puts the level back to what it was originally. So I need to get this out of take, and I need to get it into the main track. So what I'm going to do is I've pulled it down, and I'm going to right click on the take itself. I'm going to go move take to new track. Okay, there it is. Now I'm going to take out, delete what was on the track above, and then I'm going to put this back on that track there. And I'm going to change the colors as well because that's been annoying me too. So guitar track is yellow, and then we can get rid of this extra track because we don't actually need it. But now when we normalize it to -18, it should stay there. Rather than popping back up to the much higher level. So like I said, should have done that a lot earlier in the project. Everything looks a lot neater and tidier as a result of doing it. So there we go, a bit of an extra step. So compression. What is compression? Well, we talked a lot about this in lesson. Compression is about evening out dynamics. So it's about minimizing the difference between quiet sections and loud sections. So for example, if you're thinking about a singer who's singing a song and the verse is quieter than the chorus, what you don't want is for the listener to have to turn up the volume in order to hear everything in the verse, but then have their ears blown off when things get louder. So compression reduces the volume of frequencies above a certain point of not frequencies, of volumes above a certain point. So if you've got something with very, very high volume, the top of that volume will be reduced down, so there is a less of a difference between the quiet stuff and the loud stuff. And there are two different ways that we are going to handle compression. The first is we're going to do it on an individual track. We're going to look at the compression controls, and we're not going to choose a preset. We're going to talk about actually manipulating the preset and the conditions that we're going to apply. So we're going to start with the kick drum, seeing as we've already done some nice gating on it. And I'm going to use the solo tool. Okay, and I'm going to go to effects, which is here, and I'm going to apply a compressor. So here is the compressor control window, and I'm going to start with a preset. Nothing wrong with that at all. So I'm going to go to drums, and it's a kick. So let's go with, I don't know, Type R kick drum. That'll boost it quite a lot, make it sound quite punchy. Okay, so the two main controls that you need to be aware of when you are looking at compression are the threshold and the ratio. Okay, these are the two most important controls and the ones I want you to focus on for the time being. Threshold is the point at which the compression starts. So if you had your threshold set right down at -50, okay, anything above -50 is going to be compressed. So effectively what that means is the whole signal is going to be compressed because all of our sound is probably going to be above -50. If we go up to -40, anything which is below -40, again, not very much, is going to be completely left alone, and anything above that is going to be compressed. -30, anything below -30 is going to be left untouched. Anything above -30 is going to be compressed. And then going up into the sort of useful areas, -20, anything above -20 is going to be compressed, going all the way up to anything above 10, and then all the way up to the top. Anything above 0 is going to be compressed. Okay, so in theory, if you have recorded properly and everything is okay, that would mean that you're not going to get any compression because none of our tracks are above 0. But the Type R kick drum, let's just set it back, you can see has a threshold setting of 15.5, -15.5, which means that anything above -15.5 is going to be experiencing compression. How much compression? Well, that's what the ratio is all about. So a ratio of 1 to 1, which is what this is, 1 to 1, you can see it there. A ratio of 1 to 1 means no compression. Nothing is being compressed. Okay, the higher the ratio becomes, the more compression we are adding. So 1.4, which is a very common 1 to 1, is light compression. Then 2 to 1, getting more, 3 to 1, 5 to 1, up to 8. Anything around 10, we're getting into quite substantial compression now. And you know, anything above that, that's a lot of compression, so it needs to be used sparingly. So what does Type R kick drum have by default? So 4.6 to 1, just under 5. That is not masses of compression, but plenty of compression. So let's compare with the compressor on and with the compressor off. So here it is on. Turning it off. What a difference. Okay, now because of the overtones and frequencies and everything within that sound, it has made the kick drum sound an awful lot punchier. And actually, that's what I'm looking for, because I think the drums are just sounding a little bit weak. So we haven't, as such, increased the volume of them. We've just made them stick out in the mix a little bit more. Okay, let's see how much compression we can add. Okay, so that's applying a lot of compression. Bringing it back. I think it was on 4.6, wasn't it? And I'll be honest, I went straight for Type R kick drum because it's one I use a lot. It's a very, very useful preset. Okay, very, very useful. You can also use compressor as gain control. I do this quite often. You've got the input gain, that's the level of the signal coming in, and the output gain, that's the level of the signal going out after the compression. And you can see that they're actually different. The compression has had the effect of increasing the amount of gain on the signal. So just be careful when you're adding vast amounts of compression. It might be necessary to then change your levels elsewhere and make sure that everything is nice and tight. I'm going to leave that. I'm going to leave that on. Let's hear that.
There's somewhere.
Actually be too much. Let's have a listen to the chorus and check the stereo output. No, we're still looking okay in terms of levels. So let's go to the snare. Let's add an individual compressor to that as well, which I'm in the wrong place. Here we go. Compressor, mono, and let's put on let's go with VCA snare. Okay, so again, you can see similar sort of ratio, 4.6 to 1. So not extreme compression, but a reasonable amount of compression. And anything above minus 12.5 is being compressed. Quite like that.
Tells me it's just fine. I guess she's out there somewhere. And the sailors, they
nice. So I think both of those have made an enhancement. We've got a much punchier kick and much punchier snare drum, which is what I wanted. They're now sticking out of the mix a little bit. Let's just check our levels.
Allison outside was sinking. There's nothing here, but that's okay.
Okay, so you can see we're now at -1 on the master feeder. So master fader. So we previously boosted the snare probably worth, and the kick, probably worth now bringing them back now that we've got a little bit of compression in.
Outside your room, your sister's spinning, but she laughs and tells me it's just fine. I guess she's out, yes.
So all the time, using your ears, adjusting as you go, doing your checks, making sure that everything is as it should be. So that's individual compressors, right? That's sort of the level 2 way. If you did Unit 6 or Unit 7 in Year 11, then that's how you would be applying compression. However, you guys are expected to be able to use buses. And buses are incredibly useful. Now, there are 2 ways of doing buses. You can do buses as outputs, or you can do buses as sends. Now, they are slightly different, but I'm going to do sends because I've always found sends to be a little bit more useful. Outputs really is just for grouping together tracks, whereas sends you have a little bit more control over what you're doing. So I'm going to show you sends now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of my drum tracks. I've got all of them. Yes, I have. And I'm going to change the send to bus 1. There you go. Okay, bus 1. Now what that makes happen, let's just increase the size of the mixer a little bit. What that makes happen is all of these are now being sent to bus 1. Bus being like a collective place where all of those are going. And that's created an extra channel strip. This one over here called aux1. Now what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to rename it and I'm going to call it the drums bus. I'm going to make it the same color as the drums, so it's nice and easy to keep track of. So there's a drum bus. So what that means is that anything that I now apply in terms of effects or processing to that bus will happen to all of those. But the nice thing about using sends rather than output is you can control how much of each track is going through the bus. So at the moment, they're all set to negative infinity. So I could do whatever I wanted to the bus. I could put 4,000 different effects on it. It wouldn't make any difference because none of those signals are being sent to that bus. So the first thing we need to do is get it set up so they are. So I'm going to set them all to negative 18. Why? Because that's what our tracks are set to. So this will be effectively no additional volume or amplification on the signal that we're using. So I'm going to go 18. And I might be able to do this collectively, I don't know, but it doesn't take long. Now I'm typing it. You could set it out by changing the dial in the traditional way. Why did that go to negative +6? Oh, because I put plus. Dingbat. Negative 18. Negative 18. It was trying to set to. It can't go more than +6. There we go. So I'm double clicking on it, typing negative 18. So you're good to make mistakes. Okay, and there we go. So now all of the drum tracks are sending to the drums bus. That means that if I add another compressor onto that channel, let's go with classic drums. Okay, all of those tracks are now being compressed.
And the sailors, they strike poses to the covered walls.
Gosh, that's increased the clarity of the drums within the mix. That's really nice. Now, one of the reasons why I use send is because you can be selective. If you want less of one particular part going to that compressor, say if you've already compressed it once, for example, like the snare or the bass, the kick drum, and you can just turn it off. Okay, you can have it not going through that second compressor. It's still going through its first compressor, but it's not going through the total one. Like the toms for me have started to stick out a little bit, so it might be that you reduce them back, or you might want more of the overheads. So it gives you an opportunity to really customize what's going on in your mix. I'm actually going to put that back to where it was because it sounded quite nice. Trust your ears. Always.
Answer slowly. With your listen, I'm lost. I listen, I drink your wine.
There we go. So there's compression, how to use it, how to apply it, how to apply it individually, and how to apply it through a bus as well. Okay, so let's write that up. So let's go on to the kick. Take a screenshot. Okay, we've got a new section. Compression, one of the most useful tools we have as mix engineers. Duplicate those, take them down, take this out, put this in. What have I done? I've applied compression in two different ways. The first was to individual tracks. And the second was using a bus. I applied individual... Oh dear, typing's gone. Snare and kick tracks. Now, you're probably going to want to apply compression to more tracks than that. You need to apply compression to more tracks than that. But it's about creating your own individual version. So, you know, they're extremely useful on vocal tracks. They can be used on drums. They can be used on guitars. You can apply them to anything, okay? So that's all I'm going to do in terms of compression, but that isn't where I would stop if I were actually mixing. I would certainly apply some compression to the vocals, for example, but I'm not going to show you that so that you get the opportunity to create your own version. I did this by starting with a preset and then adjusting the parameters. The two most important parameters in compression are threshold and the ratio. Give a little explanation of what it is. Threshold is the point at which compression begins. For example, with a threshold of -12, anything above -12 will be compressed, but the rest of the signal will be left alone. The ratio shows how much compression is being applied. A ratio of 1:1 means that no compression is being applied. The higher the ratio, the more compression. Okay, so we're explaining as we go along. That's actually screenshot 13, isn't it? Unlucky for some. So let's, what have we got? Did I have a picture of... Yes, I did, so I can use the same screenshot. In fact, let's just keep it on the same slide. No, let's not. In fact, we're going to move on and talk about busing. So let's open a bus, or rather, let's have a bus visible. There we go. Duplicate. Screenshot 14. The second way that I have applied compression compression is using a bus. Buses are useful for grouping tracks together and sending multiple signals through signal processing. Here I have created a drum bus for all of the drum tracks, coloured green to match them, and have sent all of the drum tracks through this bus before going to the master fader. This means that any processing applied to the bus will apply to all of the tracks. I have used sends rather than outputs because this means that I can control how much of each track is going to the send, and therefore have more control over the final mix. Okay, and there's compression. Now, as I said, you're going to want more than that. You're probably going to apply compression to the majority of your tracks. Yes, that might well be possible. Whether you do it individually or whether you do it through buses is up to you. But experiment with compression. You can get some fantastic results with it. My aim here is not to create a final mix. My aim here is to show you all of the different techniques that you're going to use, but not every example of the techniques that you're going to use. So go and experiment, try it out, see what happens, have fun with compression, and I'll see you in the next episode for EQ.